Welcome to Tell Me More Stories Told as podcast. Get ready, folks, because today we are diving headfirst into, well, a surprisingly adventurous story.
Hmm?
It's about resilience, a bit of science, and maybe even some unexpected sweetness. And it stars a rather humble little vegetable.
You might even have it on your plate tonight. We're talking about the Brussels sprout.
That's the one. And believe me, this little green orb, it's got a journey. We're talking centuries, continents.
Yeah.
It's way more interesting than you might think.
Absolutely. We've dug up some really fascinating history here. It's a story that honestly changes how you look at them.
Totally. So forget whatever you think you know about Brussels sprouts. We're going way back, ancient roots, how they traveled the world, and, crucially, the science that tweaked their taste.
Yeah, we've pieced together a pretty detailed picture from like way back when to how they end up in your grocery store today.
Okay, let's do it. The beginning. Now, obviously, Brussels sprout,
Yeah,
you think Belgium, right?
you do. And that's definitely part of the story, giving it its name and all. But the actual origins, we need to rewind quite a bit further back than that.
Oh, really? Like how far back?
Well, believe it or not, some sources suggest that, the ancestors of these things were probably kicking around in ancient Rome.
No way. Ancient Rome? Like toga-wearing Romans munching on proto-sprouts.
Well, maybe not exactly like ours, but yeah, various types of cabbages were definitely part of their diet. Think of it as like chapter one for this whole branch of the cabbage family.
Okay, wow. So Rome is the ancient history. Where does Belgium come in then?
Right, so fast forward quite a bit. The sprout, as we know it, those little mini cabbage things, they seem to have really taken shape around the 13th century.
Ah, okay.
And yeah, that was in the area that's now Belgium, specifically near Brussels. So the name sticks from that period, even if the deep roots are older.
Gotcha. So 13th century Belgium is where these guys show up. But did people write about them then?
Interestingly, no, not right away. They were definitely around, being cultivated. But the first actual written mention we have doesn't pop up until 1587.
Huh. So they existed for what, like 3 centuries before someone bothered to write, hey, check out these tiny cabbages.
Pretty much. It's like they had this long, undocumented youth before hitting the historical record.
Wild. Okay, so 1587, they're officially documented. And from Belgium, they started traveling.
They sure did. During the 16th century, even before that official mention, really they started getting popular across Northern Europe, especially in the cooler parts.
Which makes sense, given what they like temperature-wise. We'll get to that.
Exactly. And then eventually they made the leap over the channel to Britain sometime in the 17th century.
Okay, here's a cool little fact I found, speaking of how they grow. The botanical group name, Gemmifera.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Right. It literally means bud bearing. How perfect is that? It just nails how they grow on the stalk. A bit of poetry for the gardeners listening.
It really is spot on. And speaking of how they grow, let's dig into that a bit. They're kind of picky, aren't they, temperature-wise?
Yeah, seems like it. They prefer it cool. What's the range again?
They do best between 7 and 24 degrees Celsius. That's roughly 45 to 75 Fahrenheit for listeners in the U.S.
Right.
But the sweet spot, the ideal range where you get the best yields, is actually a bit cooler, 15 to 18 Celsius, so about 59 to 64 Fahrenheit.
So definitely a cool weather crop. No wonder they took off in Northern Europe. And they take their sweet time growing too, right?
Oh, yeah. You're not planting these and harvesting next month. From seed to sprout harvest, you're looking at anywhere from 90 to 180 days.
Wow, it's like 3 to 6 months. Takes patience.
It does. And the way they grow is so distinctive. These buds, the sprouts themselves, they form in a spiral pattern up this really thick central stalk.
And the stalk gets pretty tall.
Yeah, it can reach, 60 to 120 centimeters. That's like 2 to 4 feet tall. Quite impressive, really. Little tower of sprouts.
In harvesting, you don't just yank the whole thing out, do you? Or can you?
Well, you can, especially commercially sometimes. But traditionally, particularly for home gardens, it's often done by hand. You snap off the lower sprouts as they mature, maybe 5 to 15 at a time.
So you get multiple harvests from one plant.
Exactly. You work your way up the stalk over several weeks or even months. Or, like I said, cut the whole stalk at once if they mature evenly.
And how much do you actually get off one stalk? It looks like a lot.
It can be pretty decent. A single stalk could yield maybe 1.1 to 1.4 kilograms. It's like 2.4 to over 3 pounds. Commercially, the average yield per stalk is probably closer to 900 grams, so around 2 pounds. Still, not bad.
Not bad at all for one plant. And the main harvest season for those of us in, say, the UK or northern US?
Classic cool season. You're typically harvesting from September right through to March, Makes them a traditional winter vegetable for sure.
Okay, now here's something I found fascinating, kind of a pro tip for growers or maybe just cooks. Frost is actually good for them.
Yes, absolutely. This surprises a lot of people. A light frost, or even a couple of frosts, can genuinely make Brussels sprouts taste sweeter.
How does that even work?
Well, it's a natural plant response. The cold signals the plant to start converting some of its starches into sugars. It's like a natural antifreeze. But the delicious side effect for us is a milder, less bitter, sweeter sprout.
So don't panic if you get an early frost on your sprouts. It might be a good thing.
Exactly. Don't rush the harvest just because it got a bit chilly.
That's brilliant. And while we're on plant science stuff, they're related to quite a few other common veggies, aren't they?
Oh yeah, big time. They're all part of the same species. Brassica oleracea, we're talking broccoli, cabbage itself, collard greens, kale, even kohlrabi.
Wow. So it's like one master species that humans have selectively bred over centuries to emphasize different parts, like leaves for kale, flowers for broccoli, stems for kohlrabi.
Precisely. And for Brussels sprouts, it was those little lateral buds along the stem that got developed. It's amazing how much diversity came from one plant ancestor.
It really is. Does that mean there are different types of Brussels sprouts too, like different colors?
There are. It's not super common in most stores, but you can find purple varieties, things like Ruby Crunch or Red Bull.
Purple Brussels sprouts?
Yep. They're usually hybrids, developed, I think, back in the 1940s, often by crossing with red cabbage. The goal was often to get that color, but also maybe a slightly sweeter, milder taste, too.
Huh. Always learning something new. Okay, let's tackle the elephant in the room, or maybe the bitterness on the plate. A lot of people, myself included sometimes, associate sprouts with bitterness.
That's the historical baggage they carry, isn't it? For generations, that bitterness was a major drawback for many people.
Right, but that changed.
It really did. And this is where the science gets cool again. In the 1990s, a Dutch scientist, Hans van Doorn, he figured it out. He identified the specific chemicals causing most of that bitterness.
What were they?
Compounds called sinigrin and pergoitrin. Glucosinolates, technically.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing what caused the bitterness was, well, a massive breakthrough.
A game changer, you said. How so?
Because once you know the chemical culprit, you can start breeding plants that naturally produce less of it. And that's exactly what happened. Seed companies, particularly in the Netherlands, used this knowledge.
Ah, good.
They started developing new varieties that were significantly less bitter, but still gave farmers a good yield.
Yeah.
And that likely played a huge role in why Brussels sprouts are way more popular now than they were, say, 30 years ago.
So science literally made them taste better to more people.
Pretty much. Less bitterness equals more people willing to eat them.
Makes total sense. Okay, so we've got these improved sprouts. Where are they mostly grown today on a big commercial scale?
Well, sticking with Europe for a second, the Netherlands is still a huge player, as is Germany. The UK grows a lot too, though a large chunk of that is for their own domestic market.
Right. Any surprises globally?
Oh, yeah. Here's one that might catch you off guard.
Mexico.
Mexico. Growing Brussels sprouts.
And growing a lot of them.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, Mexico is the second largest exporter of Brussels sprouts in the world, volume-wise, only behind the Netherlands. Get out. Why Mexico?
Climate, mostly. Certain regions, especially down in Baja California, have conditions that allow for almost year-round production. And their main customer,
Let me guess.
the U.S. Bingo! They supply a huge amount of the fresh Brussels sprouts eaten in the United States. So those fresh sprouts in your supermarket in, say, April, decent chance they came up from Mexico.
Wow, I had no idea. Okay, so Mexico is a big supplier to the U.S. What about sprouts actually grown in the U.S.? When did that start?
The history there is a little less clear-cut on the exact when. We know French settlers were growing them down in Louisiana pretty early on.
Okay.
Commercial-scale planting seems to have started there, in the Louisiana Delta area around 1925. But it didn't stay there primarily.
Where did it move?
Mostly west to California. By about 1939, the real center of U.S. production had shifted to the central coast of California.
Why there? What's special about the California coast?
It's got that magic combination they love. Cool temperatures, often moderated by coastal fog. Areas like San Mateo, Santa Cruz, Monterey counties, they offer almost ideal conditions.
Ah, mimicking that cool northern European climate they prefer.
Exactly. And it allows for a really long growing season there, sometimes stretching from June clear through to January.
So California's the big one. Anywhere else in the U.S.?
Yeah, there's some notable production in other spots too, just not on the same scale. Washington State, up in the Skagit Valley, grows some, and also out on Long Island, New York. But California is definitely the heavyweight.
Okay. Do we know how much the U.S. produces overall?
Yeah, the total U.S. production is around 32,000 tons a year, give or take, which sounds like a lot, but maybe not compared to other major crops. The value is estimated around $27 million.
And where do most of those U.S. grown sprouts end up? Fresh market.
Actually, no. This is interesting. The vast majority, something like 80 to 85%, goes to the frozen food market.
Really? Most of it is frozen.
Seems so.
Yeah.
The rest, that 15–20%, is sold fresh. It probably reflects how people buy and store them, maybe using frozen ones more often for convenience.
It does make sense. Okay, so if I buy fresh ones, how long do they last?
They hold up reasonably well if kept cold. Under really ideal, like near-freezing commercial storage, maybe 3 to 5 weeks. In your home fridge. Probably half that. Maybe a week or two before they start looking sad.
Gotcha. And size-wise, the ones we typically see here?
Yeah, North American varieties are usually bred for that sort of bite-sized appeal, generally about 2.5 to 5 centimeters in diameter, 1 to 2 inches across.
Perfect. Okay, let's shift to why we should eat them. Besides the improved taste, nutrition, what are we getting?
Quite a bit, actually. They're mostly water when raw, but they are absolutely packed with vitamin C and vitamin K. Seriously high levels.
Okay, vitamin C and K, powerhouse. Anything else?
Yeah, you also get good amounts of some B vitamins, including folate, plus essential minerals, and a decent hit of dietary fiber. So yeah, nutritionally dense little things.
All right, convinced they're good for me. Now, how do I cook them so I actually want to eat them? What's the prep?
Standard prep is pretty simple. If they're still on the stalk, cut them off. Then trim off the little tough bit at the base and peel away any outer leaves that look yellowed or loose. Pretty straightforward.
And them. Cooking methods?
Lots of options. You can boil them, steam them, stir fry, grill, slow cook. Or, a really popular one these days, roast them.
I've heard about cutting an X in the bottom. Does that...
So some people swear by it, thinking it helps them cook more evenly, especially at boiling. But you got to be careful. If you boil them with that cut, they can get really waterlogged and mushy.
Ah, okay. Good tip. And the big enemy is overcooking, right? That's when they get unpleasant.
That is the cardinal sin of Brussels sprout cookery. Overcooking is what gives them that sad, gray, mushy texture and releases those strong sulfur compounds. That's the smell and taste many people dislike, the glucosinolates breaking down.
So avoid boiling them into oblivion. What is the best way then, generally?
Roasting gets my vote, and a lot of chefs agree. High heat, little oil, salt, pepper. It caramelizes the outside, brings out that natural sweetness we talked about, and keeps them from getting soggy.
And you can jazz them up quite a bit, too.
Oh, totally. Roasting's a great base. Toss them with Parmesan cheese towards the end. Drizzle with balsamic glaze. Add some butter, maybe a touch of brown sugar, maple syrup. Throw in some chestnuts or bacon. Sky's the limit, really.
Okay, now I'm getting hungry. It really sounds like they've come a long way from just being boiled until gray.
They absolutely have, both in terms of the plant itself, thanks to breeding, and how we approach cooking them.
So let's just quickly recap this whole amazing journey.
Sure. We started way back, possibly ancient Rome, with the ancestors. Then saw the modern sprout emerge around 13th century Brussels.
Yeah.
It spread through northern Europe, got its botanical name, Gemmifera, the bud bearer. We learned it likes cool weather, takes a while to grow on that tall stalk.
And that frost actually makes it sweeter.
Yeah.
Such a cool fact.
Then big science bit, identifying sinigrin and progotrin, the bitterness compounds, in the 90s.
Which led to breeding less bitter sprouts, boosting their popularity.
Exactly. We saw production centers in Europe and the surprise player Mexico supplying the U.S. market alongside California's coastal farms.
And learned most U.S. sprouts end up frozen, but they're packed with vitamin C and K.
And finally, the key to deliciousness. Don't overcook them. Roasting is often your best friend. Add tasty things.
It's really quite a story, isn't it? From, potentially bitter beginnings to a versatile, nutritious, and honestly, potentially delicious part of modern cuisine.
It absolutely is. It shows how much history and science can be packed into something seemingly so simple on our plates.
Makes you think, doesn't it? About the stories behind other foods we eat every day.
Definitely. And hey, if you're enjoying these kinds of deep dives, finding out the surprising stories behind everyday things, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Seriously, click subscribe so you don't miss our next exploration here on Tell Me More. We've always got another fascinating story brewing.
Good call. Do that, folks. We hope this look at the Brussels sprout has maybe changed your perspective a little, given you a new appreciation for this often underestimated vegetable.
Yeah, it's a reminder that there are incredible journeys and innovations behind even the most common things in our world. Makes you wonder what else has a hidden history, right?
Absolutely. Food for thought, you could say. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
Catch you in the next one.